Awesome. Hey, good morning, everyone. Second day of the conference, pretty exciting. My name is Tyler Droll. I'm going to give you all a quick little rundown of kind of the Yik Yak story, some lessons I learned along the way, and familiar face, hello. And some things I think that could help you as you go into whatever is next for you. So a little bit about me. I went to Furman University, a very, very prestigious computer science school. I think my graduating class of computer science was about 7. So it's more of a liberal arts school, not known for computer science. But I wanted a major with the least amount of writing possible. And so I took a computer science class, fell in love with it, and ended up majoring in that. And that is also where I met my co-founder of Yik Yak. This is Brooks Buffington. He and I met in college. We were fraternity brothers, and we started making apps together after we graduated. I was more technical, and he was more on the marketing side. He liked doing art, although he majored in accounting, which isn't a normal pairing. But we teamed up well. He was able to do more of the creative, and I did more of the technical side. And now that Yik Yak has shut down, I work with consulting startups and various companies, helping them with their marketing, do some advising. Especially, it all goes through this agency I started called 31 South. We work with companies in the crypto space, the AI space, food technology space, kind of all over the board. And my main thing I've got coming up is I'm starting a new machine learning startup. It's kind of still under wraps, but kind of a cool new technology I'm learning about, and there's more to come on that. And I got a little bored, and I couldn't leave my iOS roots, so I started tinkering with a new social app called Totem. So if y'all want to download and tear it apart, feel free to. Launched about a month ago, and it's just a quick way to kind of post status updates to your friends. And so while Yik Yak, for those of you who don't know, was a local kind of anonymous feed, and ended up getting a good bit of success. I think we raised about $75 million, grew to 75 employees, had millions of users around the world. I wish I could say that was my first app. I hit it out of the park on the first try, but of course that's not how it goes. I actually had a couple other apps before I got to Yik Yak. So I'll tell you about those real quick, because I think those were instrumental in helping me land with Yik Yak. First up was an app called Dico, which is a terrible name. It was short for dichotomy. Basically what it was is a way to poll your friends. So who's going to win the basketball game tomorrow night? Do you like hamburgers or pizza better? Stuff like that. You can tell it's beautiful, so well designed, just outstanding. Tons of features going on and very complicated. I worked about 6 months on it and didn't even crack 1,000 downloads. So that was kind of a heartbreaking thing, but it was fun to learn. I learned a lot about iOS programming along the way. Second app, this one will kind of give you an idea about how Brooks and I are a little quirky. This one is called Cuddle Buddies, A Debt to Pay. And this is kind of a joke app, but the way it works is you choose your character, either, I think we got Billy the Bear Cub or Roger the Rabbit. And you click on your character, and they pop up on screen. There's nice birds chirping, very calm music. And then a gun comes out of nowhere and holds the character hostage. And a countdown starts, and you have 10 seconds to decide to pay $1 and save the animal or let it die. And so it's more of a joke. You show it to your friends, and you get them and want to download it, check it out, and see how they react. And a big portion of our proceeds, we're going to go to no-kill animal shelters. So it's kind of an idea of how we're having fun with apps and whatnot. That one did not get into the App Store. Apple claimed it does not provide lasting entertainment. So with that, I wanted to take these kind of learnings from these failures and apply them to my next app. So number one was get approved by Apple. Make sure you got to do that if you're launching an app. But the main learning I learned was do as much work for the user as possible. So with this first app, Dico especially, the onboarding was very long and complicated. There was a ton of features in the app, which I thought users would love, but actually it backfired. They don't want to sign up for another app. They want a very quick onboarding process. And when they get into an app, they don't want to have to relearn a huge new platform. They want to get in, understand what's going on, and be able to use it very quickly. So using that learning, combined with an idea for Yik Yak, we launched Yik Yak. And so the idea for Yik Yak came from my frustration with Twitter. On my college campus, there was a few really popular Twitter accounts. This was back in 2013 when Twitter was a little more popular on college campuses. And there was a few of these accounts that could tweet to thousands of people and reach the entire campus. And I said, heck, I want one of those. I'm going to try to make one. So I sat on my couch. I vividly remember this for 4 hours trying to find a Twitter handle that wasn't taken. It seems like every handle is taken nowadays. So I got really upset with that. I was like, well, why do I even need a handle? And if I had gotten a handle I wanted, I would have to spend months and months building up a base of followers. So what if there's a way to allow me to instantly log in and instantly be connected to thousands of people? And so that was the genesis of the Yik Yak idea. I was like, make it anonymous so you don't have to create a username and connect you instantly using location. So no matter where you are in the world, you can just kind of send out a message to everyone around you, which is very useful at a college campus. And the name Yik Yak, which kind of sounds funny, stems from the idea of chit-chat or chatter. Kind of that buzz in a theater, like before I walked out here, there's kind of that buzz of everyone chatting, that chatter. So we actually, the code name for the app and in the Xcode, and it was chatter everywhere. We looked up, we saw a small company named Salesforce had an app named Chatter. And so we said, maybe we just don't go near that. So I asked my parents, hey, we're thinking about an app, any ideas? My dad's a music buff. He's like, there's Yakety Yak. And then my mom said, Yik Yak. I said, huh, that kind of works. She's like, I'll sell you the naming rights for a boat if you buy me a boat later. I said, deal. And so we went with Yik Yak. I told Brooks about it. And as I said, he was an artist. He drew up a little yak mascot. And so it all just kind of fell into place with a great brand. He picked the color, and it all just kind of worked. I built the app in about a week, very different than building an app in 6 months. And it was the most technically complex app ever. Beautiful, advanced design, as you can tell by these screenshots. Very custom components, no standard table views right out of the Xcode. Just kidding, obviously. Took a week to build, used PHP as a back end, MySQL as a database, $5 server on DigitalOcean, and Parse to do push notifications. So extremely, extremely simple. My goal here was not spend months and months building an app, but spend a few days building a prototype and just to test this idea. And it worked great. It was actually, I think, putting those limitations on myself that forced me to create a simple product that users could understand quickly. All right, so we build the app. Now we need to grow and get users on it. So here's a little pop quiz. Since we're big on college campuses, I thought I'd do a little pop quiz. These are 4 different methods we use to market the app. And these are ones I all personally did myself. So you need to decide which one you think was the most successful. So first up, A, walk around tailgates in a yak costume. Or B, flyers around an entire college campus, in dorms, on telephone poles, etc. C, emailing all the sororities and fraternities. Or D, dropping beer off at the Greek houses. So what do y'all think? D? C, A. So, believe it or not, it's actually C, which probably explains why MailChimp is such a successful company. Email is extremely powerful, and here's kind of a few reasons why I think it is. Number one, it's extremely scalable. Brooks, my co-founder, was able to send hundreds and thousands of emails every week to tens of campuses around the nation. He now has tendonitis in his wrist, I think because he sent so many emails, but we were able to reach a ton of people as opposed to going campus to campus physically. We were also able to personalize these emails as opposed to just a standard flyer on a telephone pole or something. We'd also be a little quirky with it. So, for example, our tagline literally was, hey, blank, like, hey, Jonathan, can you do a solid for a few rad dudes? If you get an email saying that with your name in it, you're probably going to open it. And that's what we did. We had a good open rate, and people read it and checked it out. And we're also creative in the email, and we could kind of personalize how we did this fear of missing out and play on that. We would say, hey, University of Georgia student, Georgia Tech is on this app. Why aren't y'all? Are y'all a little slower, less technically advanced than them? And they say, no, absolutely not. We better check this out and make sure we're not behind the times. And so using that, we'd go school by school, just pick their rival school, say, hey, your other school's on it. Why aren't you? And people get very curious and fear that they're missing out on the new thing, the new trend, the new piece of technology. So that worked really well. And also it gave us a great way to leverage networks. By targeting sororities and fraternities, we're able to email it to like the executives in that Greek organization and say, hey, please forward it to the rest of your organization. And with one click of a button, we could then send an email to 100 people. All they do is forward it. It was interesting, though. We never asked them to download the app. We just said, hey, can you please forward this? And that, for some reason, I don't know, that wording worked a lot better. We tried both ways, and that wording worked a lot. The bottom line, though, if you're starting something, try everything. I did a bunch of crazy marketing ideas that you saw earlier. We found one that works. There's a really cool podcast I listened to called How I Built This on NPR. And he dives into all the different like founders of famous companies. And they usually each have a very unique marketing thing they did that kind of helped it take off. Since we're in Atlanta, one that always sticks with me is Sarah Blakely and Spanx. When she was launching Spanx, they put the Spanx in like the underwear section, and they weren't selling too well. So she took a like stand and literally took them out of the underwear section, put them next to the cash register in Nordstrom's, I think, and they started selling. And just try crazy stuff, try everything. You'll find something that works and can kind of help you get some traction. These are two just kind of silly pictures of our brand and stuff we did. So we started growing, we started getting around to a bunch of new campuses. Here's a map of how we started to spread. This might look like a bunch of random dots, but it's actually not. We're very strategic in the customers, or in this case, the campuses we reached out to. We started in South Carolina and Georgia, so kind of that bottom right part of the map, and then started expanding more through Georgia and more through South Carolina, North Carolina, Tennessee, Alabama, and it started to grow from there. Our goal with spreading this app was to get it into groups of like networks that can actually have word-of-mouth conversations. And so by that I mean you want to get it into colleges where kids are going to go home on spring break, go home on winter break, and talk to their friends from high school. And they'll maybe all go to the college in South Carolina, come home, talk to each other, and it spreads. You want to basically facilitate word-of-mouth growth. You'd be surprised how much mountain ranges play a barrier in growth of technology. Our first semester, we had basically nothing west of the Rockies. And you can kind of see we're on the eastern side of the Appalachians. So even in today's world, it's very interesting how geography plays a role. While expanding to a bunch of new campuses, we also hit some scaling issues. Keep in mind, I built this on a $5 DigitalOcean server. You can only up the server so much on DigitalOcean before you start having scaling issues that come with it. I call those champagne problems. If you get to that point, great, you can solve them later. Very happy that I built like a prototype just to hit the ground running as opposed to trying to build a huge system from the get-go. With scaling issues, the app started going down a lot. This picture is actually me at about 3 or 4 a.m. in the morning. There's pizza and beer and the yak throwing his hands up. While we had a consultant who was our first CTO actually at his office fixing the app. When he came in and looked at the database I set up, he definitely had a good chuckle. I don't even know if I had indexes set up. I didn't know. I don't know if I even had indexes set up. I didn't know how to make sharded databases. I didn't know anything really at that point, but he was able to fix it and at least keep it up for the time running. And you would think if an app goes down, that's actually very detrimental to your growth. You'd be surprised how much it's the opposite. As long as the app doesn't shut down for days at a time, But if it goes down for minutes at a time, that's actually a great opportunity to say, hey, here's how popular our app is. You can look at HQ Trivia as a good example of that recently. They keep their tech is going down, but they keep growing. Everyone talks about it and says, can you believe it's going down? Can you believe how popular it is? And we actually used it as a good marketing opportunity and said, hey, your campus just crashed the app because you're using it so much. And they love that. So we continue to grow kind of through those regions as you see. And so servers were getting a little more costly. We're like, okay, we're getting some traction and whatnot. And then we started getting some press. We got our first press just by pure luck. And so if you're starting something, never discount luck. We were at the Fox Theater for TechCrunch's they do like pitch-off events around the country. They did one in Atlanta at the Fox Theater. And Brooks and I went. We were brand new to the tech scene in Atlanta. We didn't know what to do. We had little name tags on, said our name, Tyler, Yik Yak. We were walking around, don't know who to talk to. I see some girl look at my name tag. She looks like she's in college. She looks at my name tag. She goes, huh. I was like, that was odd. Then we watch her walk over, and she starts talking to the editor of TechCrunch, who's Jordan Crook here, who wrote this article, who's hosting the event. And so we see them go out later. I think they're just smoking a cigarette outside, and Brooks and I are pacing. We're like, oh, do we go talk to them? What do we do? She definitely saw our name tag and recognized it. What do we do? So we walk up. We're like, hey, I think you saw our name tag. Do you know what Yik Yak is? She's like, oh my gosh, yes. I love it. I go to University of Georgia. It's the biggest thing ever. I love it. And her sister, being a reporter, is like, I smell a story. And so next thing you know, we're on the front page of TechCrunch, and that's where we got a lot of inbound interest for fundraising. So that happened by pure luck. I mean, so put yourself in situations to get lucky, I don't know. But that one was definitely lucky. That all fell together. But then this started some fundraising, because this was our first kind of tech-centric press we had ever gotten. And so all the VCs obviously read these articles. And so we got a lot of inbound interest. We went out west, started raising some money, met with a ton of investors, and ended up walking away with a term sheet for, I think this one was 1.2 million. This is our series, our seed round. So a couple lessons from that experience I learned. Don't take shots before a red eye. And so we closed the term sheet. Brooks and I are so excited. We have a red-eye flight back to Atlanta. We're like in line to board the plane. We're like, screw it, let's celebrate. We go take shots. Waking up at 4 a.m. on a red-eye plane, in the back of the plane, middle seat, not a good time. Gonna have a bad time. I say this as a joke, but I say this to actually highlight the kind of ups and downs that come with startups. It's a roller coaster ride, for sure. And this was a high point. The elation you feel when you close a deal is so exciting, so great, especially when your bank account's getting drained, server bills are going up, you need to start hiring people, and you're like, how am I going to pay for any of this? So this was a high moment, for sure, when we closed this deal, followed directly by a down moment. So don't count your chickens before they hatch. I remember we're about to close the deal. They're about to wire the money. I'm driving home from the ATV on I-85. It's about 11 p.m. at night. I get a call from the investor. I thought it was just kind of closing details, whatnot. And he says, hey, we're out. Okay, excuse me? You gave me your word, you were in, you're wiring us all the money. No, sorry, we discussed it, we're pulling out of the investment. So, obviously, heart hits the floor. How am I gonna pay the bills? How am I gonna do any of this stuff? So that's kind of the ups and downs. Luckily, I didn't do this on purpose, but I learned the importance of not closing any doors. So we met with a ton of investors while we were out there, and we opted to go with this other one, the term sheet I was just talking about. And instead of telling the other investors to screw off, I kind of left it open, said, hey, I'll circle back if anything goes wrong. Something did go wrong, so I was able to circle back very smoothly and say, hey, actually, we're still raising money, and we were able to close a round with them pretty quickly. So kind of learned a couple of valuable lessons through the fundraising process there. So after we raised that seed round, which was about 1.5, a few weeks later we raised 10 million, which is a weird time frame to do all that. We had not hired anyone at this point. Brooks and I weren't even getting paid. And so we started hiring people, finally. We had to hire someone to teach us how to hire people, which is kind of, sounds all backwards. So we started hiring people, and I quickly learned it's all about people. And it's all about the people you hire, the culture you set, and looking at this picture obviously brings back a lot of memories and whatnot. I know JC's in this picture right here. And it's cool. With these first hires, these are the ones that set the culture. So be very picky on who you hire first, because those can determine everything. Because those are the people you now put in charge of hiring decisions going forward. And it just snowballs out of there. And whatever you set first for the culture will continue to kind of permeate through the entire organization. And I will say there's something special about the first group of hires you have. Those are the people that they join you before you've kind of proved anything. They're bought into the mission. Your team is so small, you get to know each other really well. And those are some of the memories I definitely cherish. So if you're in that kind of stage, definitely I recommend take a lot of pictures, remember a lot of stories and whatever, and reminisce on those times. And also invest in people's development. This is one of my favorite things I did throughout the course of Yik Yak. Finding people who maybe started somewhere and they wanted to learn a new skill set. Invest in them, give them the opportunity, and it usually worked out very, very well. We actually had an iOS developer, Richard Guy, who is, I think, one of the best developers in town. He started just as a developer in Yik Yak, and he's like, I want to learn about managing. And so we helped him, set him with some mentors and advisors and some kind of training to help him learn how to manage people and a group of developers. So we keep going. We go through summer. We get some marketing in place. We start expanding out west and to some international markets. Along with that comes a lot of growth, a lot of new users, and also some new fundraising. We ended up closing a round for around $60 million from Sequoia and learned a lot about the fundraising process in that sense. Number one is traction attracts money. Doesn't quite matter where you're based, doesn't matter the team, and those are very important, but if you have traction, you'd be surprised how easy it is to raise money. There's a lot of money sitting on the sidelines and they're looking for places with growth to put it. This is kind of a weird one. Play hard to get, which kind of doesn't make quite sense. You're like, I need money to keep the business going and everything. But I don't know if it's a weird psychological thing. If you come across like hard to get, I don't know if it rubs VCs the wrong way and like they want what they can't have, but it's a good way to kind of approach VCs in a weird way. When you go to a VC knocking on the door begging to raise funds, usually they'll back away and be like, oh no. But if you kind of play hard to get, it changes the psychology of things and you'd be surprised what you can accomplish. And number three, make sure you have multiple options if you're raising money. If you've ever been to an auction where there's one person bidding, the price doesn't go up high. If you've been to an auction where there's multiple people bidding on the same item, the price obviously goes up. So the more investors you can get in around the table, the higher you can usually get an valuation and a round size. So kind of a couple tips on raising some money. So we raised a couple dollars, had a couple million users. We kept growing and we sold to Facebook for a few $1 billion. I wish I could say that was the case. Obviously is not. The company actually ended up shutting down about a year ago. We had a lot of users around the world. So what went wrong? Why did we shut down? Why did growth stop? Those are a lot of questions I've spent time reflecting on, and I'm sure a lot of people looking in from the outside have. So this was kind of a thing. The more I reflected on, I realized how powerful it was. We were in the press constantly, and it was usually very negative. The headlines were, abuse, bullying, bomb threats, anonymous is terrible, kind of things like that. And whenever I saw one article, I'd say, well, that article's not going to sink us. I'd look at our numbers the next day. They didn't really change. What I realized is this constant negative voice will really hurt your brand, which in turn hurts your word-of-mouth growth. And if you're usually a social product or a consumer product, that's where a lot of your growth comes from. And so what happens is As the brand kind of turns sour, people don't want to talk to their friends about it. They want to bring it up at the dinner table. They don't want to say, hey, did you see that funny thing on Yik Yak? And that conversation starts to dwindle, and so growth will start to dwindle with it. I don't know how to kind of fix this. We spent a ton of energy and time like limiting the amount of abuse and misuse of anonymity on Yik Yak, and we ran the numbers, and the amount of abuse actually made up a very, very, very small percentage of activity on Yik Yak. That's what the press focused on. And so that's a tough question. I don't even know how to answer it, but I do know it definitely played a role in hurting our word of mouth growth. And then this was another thing that I kind of learned. This was my first company, kind of learning how it works, how to balance investors and employees and users. And I think I and maybe some other people maybe misbalanced the kind of internal needs of the company versus the external needs of the user. And so what I mean by that is internally you have investors you need to please, you have engineering processes you need to get in place, you have costs you need to get down, you have marketing you need to get going this way or that way. Externally, users like, am I having fun using this app? Am I engaged? Is this fun? Am I going to come back and use it tomorrow? That's all they see. They don't care what language is written, and they don't care maybe who gets along in your company or whatever. They want to know if they're having a good time using the app. And so balancing that is a balancing act. There's a time and place for both. And I think sometimes I might have skewed too much internal as opposed to external in terms of pleasing the user. So that was kind of definitely one to keep aware of, especially as the company grows and you hire more people and bring in more people around the table. And then I think ultimately we end up listening to ourselves more than our users. This kind of relates to the last one, but as you get more and more smart people around the table, whether it's investors and employees, and everyone's had a lot of success and they're coming to you with research from very, very well-known people that say, hey, this is what I think we should do. You'd be surprised what you can kind of talk yourself into. And even if it's a bad decision, but you can kind of rationalize stuff in your head, maybe a product decision or something, as opposed to really just diving in and saying, what do the users want? Where do they want the product to go? You don't have to listen to them exactly, but what's the underlying emotion that they want to get from the product? And how can we drive and serve that? And so that, I think, was one of the biggest things that I think we maybe went wrong a little bit, and it ended up reflecting itself in the growth curve of the company. So this was all about Yik Yak, but I've had the chance to kind of study a lot of companies, consult a lot of companies, both reflect on Yik Yak and watch companies, successful ones from afar, startups that are kind of getting going, all sort of stages. And so there's kind of 3 phrases I always think kind of describe successful companies and how they got started. The first 2 are start simple and start small. So there's a few examples, and you'd be surprised if you pick any successful company, you can probably apply these to them. So we'll start simple. So Snapchat, they launched with just photo, no chat, no video, no stickers. You could just take a photo and send it to a friend, and it would disappear in a few seconds. That was it. If you look at their first app, I try to use the original logos here too. If you look at their first app, it probably looks hideous, but this functionality was so simple. You open it and you know, oh, I take a picture. There's one big call to action button. Uber, for example, they launched with 1 car you can order. No SUV, no Uber X, no Uber Pool. I think it was just a black car. That's it. And you open it, 1 simple button, you know exactly what to do. Google, same thing. No mail, obviously no YouTube. Images, Google Images didn't come out till 4 years after Google launched. All it was a text box with where you type and a button you click search. Obviously the technology behind and logistics problems behind Uber and Google are very complicated and tough, but the app itself is extremely, extremely simple. And you'd be surprised how many companies start with a very, very simple interface and user experience. It's so when new users get on the app, they know exactly what to do and how to use it. Start small, and this kind of relates more to marketing. So Snapchat, for their first 6 months, I think they maybe got a couple hundred downloads actually. They didn't start getting big or getting traction until they went deep into just one high school in LA. Uber started with San Francisco. Now they're expanding everywhere, but you start and you kind of perfect the model in one city. Google started around the Stanford research community and then grew from there. You'd be surprised, a lot of these companies do not try to take over the nation right at once. They start in very small communities. A lot of startups I've been working with now are trying to build these apps with 14 million features, and they want to launch the entire nation all at once. And I have not seen it go well yet. The ones I've seen go well are the ones with a very crystal clear app and who are going after a very targeted set of users. So keep those in mind if you're looking at starting something or learning a new skill. Kind of start simple, start small, and then also start now. This is probably not a picture you expect to see at an iOS conference. This was actually me in college. I left this out of my background. I was in med school, and I dropped out to do app development. I was having so much more fun doing that, and my parents were like, you look like you're having so much more fun doing that. Med school will be there next year and the year after that. This opportunity to start now and try something new won't always be there. And so whether it's a new skill you want to learn or a new set of responsibilities you want to ask for at work or a prototype you want to make, maybe there's an idea that's been nagging you for the past couple years, I really encourage you to kind of take the plunge, start now, and it's much easier to do if you kind of start with a very specific, strict set of guidelines, very simple, very small goals. You'd be surprised what you can start with. And I'll tell you, when Jonathan reached out about this conference, I was very excited because I work with a lot of startups who want to build an app. They have an idea, they have a great executive team, they have capital, they have connections, they have everything in place, but then they always say, do you know any app developers? And it's such a valuable skill, and especially if you have it, and if you're an iOS developer, which I think many of you are, use that to do something you're passionate about or a project that you're passionate about or been thinking about. Not encouraging you to quit your job or anything, but at least take some of that time and build something you're interested in. Because I can't tell you how many companies I've talked to that say, do you know someone who can help me with this? And so rather invest that time in one of your own ideas, I think, than always helping someone else. So with that, I'll take some questions along the way.
You said you thought negative. You said that negative press was one of the big reasons you believe that was counter to the success of Yik Yak. I'm wondering what you could have done about that, and also I know there's other companies like Facebook and Uber who often receive negative press. Why do you think they're able to weather the storm of that negative press?
Yeah, so I think it comes back to kind of the product. Is the product keeping people engaged? So I don't think that was the end-all, be-all reason. I would say the product decisions we made were more heavily influencing that growth curve than the press. I think a more similar example to what we went through that did a good job would be Reddit. Reddit has been around for many years, actually, and for the longest time, no one really talked about them and said, hey, I saw that on Reddit. It was very much you kind of use it in a dark corner privately because they were being known as some dark hate groups and hate speech on there. But they kept their product really good, invested in it, and I think made some great decisions along the way. And now it's kind of becoming a little more acceptable to talk about it in public and say, hey, yeah, I saw that on Reddit, or check that out on Reddit. So I think it comes back to product and just keeping your users engaged through the product, and press will come around eventually.
So I was actually a high school teacher when the bullying things popped up, and I found, anonymously, just how my students felt about me. But y'all shut that down really quick. It was, we were a brand new school. We weren't even on Google Maps, but with our, I don't know how y'all set a radius, but within a couple of days, it was we got the message that you can't access this from this location. How did y'all get that done so quickly?
Yeah, so that was an interesting thing because when we built this app, we were not building it for like people to misuse the anonymous piece. And so when it first started going big in some high schools, the one place that really went viral was Chicago. It went just wildfire through all the high schools there. And Brooks and I were like, nope, not having this. So I remember it was a weekend, and he literally wrote down all the coordinates. I was just in the database, just typing them manually and just blocking every single high school. Then we found a company that had literally all the GPS coordinates of every single high school in America. And it was like 100,000 elementary schools, middle schools, high schools, and we put that in a database, and so any place you opened it, it would be blocked. And so there was a ton of bad overlap because it would actually block a lot of college dorms and apartments and everything, but we figured the trade-off was positive to keep them off the app.
Hello. I'm a student at Georgia Tech right now, so I remember a few years ago, like when it was like super big, but I don't remember any sort of like monetization or anything. Like, what were you guys' monetization strategy or anything in terms of like revenue?
Yeah.
You guys were trying to do.
So this is one I wish we actually invested more on. I think having raised a lot of capital kind of postponed that conversation because we hadn't focused on revenue yet. But the one thing I was super excited about was local ads. And so we actually kind of tested this a couple times. Very early on, it was like at, I think, College of Charleston. We had cookie shops say half-price cookies, and people went and got cookies. And then a really cool one I loved was we partnered with the Red Cross. And whenever they went to a campus, we'd say, hey, blood donations from 1 to 3 p.m. at this location. And we would end up doubling the donations. They would run out of like donor spots. It was just a huge, really cool example of how we could use Yik Yak to drive people to a physical location, which is extremely, extremely powerful.
Thanks.
Hey, man. Can you think of any critical junctures where I know you've probably done a lot of reflecting on like the big picture and the overall thing, but can you think of any real like critical moments where, God, I wish like I had taken a left instead of a right at that point? And what are some of those? Yeah,
so the biggest one is a product decision I go back to a lot. There was a point where we could either invest more in people's identity on the platform, so encouraging usernames and profiles and Snapchat handle links. And we saw a lot of people using the platform to kind of meet each other, so we're like, hey, maybe we could do that. That way also obviously sets you up very well for an acquisition from a company like Twitter or Facebook. So there's that pressure. And then the other way we could have gone was the interest graph. And we could have taken a college campus and divided it into, you have a general feed, a sports feed, a politics feed, a science feed, a whatever feed, kind of like little subreddits within that Yik Yak community. And I think that would have been fantastic. There was a window there, I think, where Reddit didn't have a good mobile client, and we could have really captured a large market and let everyone find their own community within their own interest. I think that's the one I always reflect on. I wish I would have gone left instead of right.
So at the beginning, I'm curious how you determined where you needed to add people as far as like when it got beyond where your technical limitations were and how you built the beginning of the technical team.
Yeah, so we started out, a lot of it, and we found some of our best hires were just people referring people. And so we took our first investment, which was actually $20,000, and we joined the Atlanta Tech Accelerator at the ATV, and they set us up with a mentor. We had scaling issues. He set us up with his CTO at his old company, who was a consultant, so we hired him as a consultant, and then he helped with our scaling issues, and as we got more capital and the ability to hire people, we hired him full time. So, and then we had, hey, do you know anyone we can hire? Yeah, and then it kind of just grew from there. It was a lot of personal referrals though, but definitely the impetus was, this thing is crashing every night and I don't know what to do. Please help.
Right. So As you said, you had users from worldwide different countries as well. So how do you target those users? How do you do the marketing for them? Do you engage local agency there, or you engage agency from here, they market in the other countries?
Yeah, I think it was, I'm trying to think, it might have been a mix. Usually what it was though, we would try to find reps or like campus ambassadors on the campuses we were launching at, and sometimes we would use a local agency to help source those reps, but then we would manage them internally, and we might hire a country manager specifically who maybe spoke that language or knew more about the culture, and they could help us pick the campuses to launch at, help manage the individual reps, but usually we would find ambassadors within that country on the ground to help get it going.
Hi there. Could you talk a little bit about how you handled as a company sexually explicit content, legal issues, employees having to look at it?
Sexual explicit content? Yeah, so we for a long time did not allow photos. And when we did, we put a lot of, number one, like machine-driven filters in place, and we had a team based in the Philippines who was filtering all the content. I think they definitely saw some inappropriate images. John, I know, helped build the tools for that, so he could probably attest to that. And then with text, it was decently easy to filter out very bad words. People would try to work around that, of course, but we did our best to filter it out, and we made sure it was labeled, this is for adults, this is not for kids. And then the biggest thing was we had a downvote mechanism, like on Reddit, and once it got to -5, it was kicked off the platform. And so empowering the community to kind of set the tone is what helped us keep up with moderation the best way. Yeah. Cool. One more.
I assume you get approached a lot by a lot of random people and startups. What do you think is the most effective way to get your attention and get your time?
I mean, it's easy to get in touch with me with LinkedIn nowadays. I'd say it needs to be a kind of unique idea, and it needs to look like you have momentum. It doesn't mean you have users, but it looks like you're trying to get something going. You can usually kind of sniff out like, this is a random idea, it probably won't come to fruition, versus like, hey, we've put in hard work, we're serious about this. So if I'm investing my time in that, I want to know that they're also invested in it. So LinkedIn's the best way to get in touch with me, I'd say, but I don't know. Just kind of experience and just sniffing out kind of what feels real and not. And then I also look for different areas that I'm interested in, and crypto to food tech to AI, AR. Just kind of spread it around.
Yik Yak's college engagement, like as you said, was some of the best. I was at Georgia Tech too, and their marketing was so good on college campuses. And now that that's gone, it doesn't seem like anything's filled that space. Do you think there's still potential for some kind of something to fill that space?
Yeah, I'd say so. There was a bunch of copycat competitors that launched while we were still around and right after we shut down. Nothing has quite captured the market. I don't know if they're kind of diluting the opportunity by having 10 people in the space as opposed to just one. And a lot of the apps I've seen are also launching a much more complicated product. They're like, hey, we're Yik Yak plus these 10 features. And so you open the app and you're a little overwhelmed. Do I post a photo, a video, a GIF? Do I share my location? I don't know what to do. As opposed to Yik Yak, we just try to simulate you're picking up the campus newspaper. It's so simple, so easy. And I haven't seen anyone quite do it that simple yet. Cool. All right.
Give it up for
Cool.
Tyler
Thank you all so
Droll.
much.